time!
Richard Simmons was one of the most visible celebrities in America.
We get to believe in our society that only the thin people are successful, and that's not true at all.
Hey, come dance with me! Come dance with me, come on!
Is Richard Simmons now a woman? That's the shocking headline in the National Enquirer.
You're sometimes very womanly and sometimes manly.
Womanly?
Yeah, he relates to both sexes. That's why people like him. Is that a bad thing?
Howard. I am that court jester.
Richard Simmons has not been seen in public ever since, for more than 8 years.
No one should be worried about me.
Richard Simmons is a fitness icon who dominated the media for decades and rebranded what it meant to be an entertainer in wellness. But Richard wasn't doing too great himself. He struggled with his identity and secret health issues he kept from the public. It wasn't until he disappeared we learned about Richard's struggles and the battles he was facing behind closed doors. This is the sad and dark downfall of Richard Simmons. So let's get into it. We're going to be talking about somebody who completely transformed the fitness industry and brought it into the entertainment world. Richard Simmons was a big deal because not only was he working out, but he was working out in front of everyone. He was able to create a series where he put himself in your home and built a personal connection with them. It was a different way of becoming a celebrity, not the classic, Hollywood movies and red carpets. It was fitness. It was different, and he was unique. Actually, there is a secret birth defect that Richard Simmons has and added to his stardom. And when I mean Richard Simmons was everywhere, he was everywhere, and people loved him because he was so different. From that interview that Richard Simmons is one of a kind. But in 2014, Richard, who had recently tearfully referred to himself as a court jester, suddenly vanished from the spotlight, and he hasn't made any public appearances since. TMZ put out a piece about Richard Simmons that states that the sassy, self-assured version of himself that he presented to the public was merely a front, and that the real Richard Simmons was profoundly shy and a sensitive soul who struggled being made fun of. Part of the reason why Richard Simmons was so famous was because he was quirky. He acted a little bit different. People laughed with him and partially at him. And while it seemed like Richard was in on it, on the joke, and he kind of, pushed that and leaned into it, it still kind of destroyed him inside, knowing that he was a laughingstock. Supposedly, Richard Simmons has been holed up in his Hollywood Hills home due to a painful ailment that he has been battling with since birth, and he's been keeping it a secret from his adoring public. Quote, something that's happened to him at birth is directly connected to his disappearance. A managing editor at TMZ said that he has a birth defect that significantly affects one of his legs. He was born without a full set of bones in his foot, and it causes physical and emotional problems. Which I'm sure that is true, because if this is his career, fitness, and using his body, it must be terrible to realize that your body isn't going to keep up with you. Quote, Richard found comfort in food and he gained a lot of weight, a producer says, and that put a lot of stress on his knees. Now, some claim it was this early but enduring damage that spearheaded his eventual rise to pop culture legend, and later his downfall into a world of loneliness and despair. I think looking back at old videos of Richard Simmons, it's sad to imagine that this guy is all cooped up in his home and depressed and not feeling good about himself because he pushed the opposite message as a celebrity.
It's sweating time!
Richard Simmons was one of the most visible celebrities in America.
I kiss and hug more people than the Pope.
He had biggest heart you've ever imagined. He deeply cared about people.
I always welcome everyone with unconditional love.
You couldn't turn on a TV without seeing him.
Everybody in the audience got one today!
But then, in 2014, he just vanished.
It was almost like you were going to a funeral, but of a person who was still living.
Richard Simmons has not been seen in public ever since, for more than 8 years, and the theories are wild.
So let's get into these theories and why Richard Simmons would just go away. Now, Richard Simmons was born in July 1948 and he was raised in New Orleans. The workout king claimed that he came out of his mother's womb with a fork because the food was so good down in New Orleans that he was ready to eat. I haven't been down there yet, so I want to go check it out. I've heard good things. Richard said, I could recognize a package of bacon at 20 feet. The strips of bacon looked so weak, so flimsy, so sad until they hit the frying pan. Then they began swimming and dancing, lacing up at the sides and turning golden brown. So he clearly has some interesting relationship with food that probably plays into his fitness obsession. As a teenager, Richard's weight became more of a problem. Quote, puberty was graduating from Thousand Island salad dressing to Caesar salads, from hot dogs and hamburgers to beef stroganoff, and from ice cream in a cone to creme brulee. Richard's obesity had a hugely negative effect on his self-worth, as he emotionally recalled in an 80s interview. He said, I went through a lot of hurt as a child. I was the largest child in school. So eating was something that he found comfort in, but he also realized there was so much pain being obese and getting bullied for it. Richard actually admitted to Oprah in the 80s that he developed an ED. He had an eating disorder after high school. He said he stopped eating and he got to 119 pounds. Keep in mind, he was a 15-year-old boy weighing in at 200, so that was a pretty significant drop.
There are three groups of people in our society that have been shafted, that have been rejected and neglected. That's the overweight, the senior citizen, and the disabled. My highest was 268 and my lowest was 119 because at a certain point I was very afraid to eat because I was very afraid to die. Yeah. You know, and so I stopped eating and I got to 119 pounds and ended up in the hospital. And that's
so you
why
were anorexic for a while?
Oh yeah. The thought of food, like when I saw spaghetti, I saw worms. I started picturing food as an enemy.
When was this?
Well, I'd lost 123 pounds and when I was 19. That was quite a while ago. And then when I was 20, I began losing even more and went down from 136 down to 119. Because, you know, you get to believe in our society that only the thin people are successful, and that's not true at all.
So obviously Richard had a lot of different thoughts running through his mind, and actually he used his birth defect and his foot as fuel to become fit and healthy. He claims he adopted a lifestyle of balance, moderate eating, and exercise. And although he managed to shed the pounds, he never managed to shed the insecurity that accompanied his obesity and the birth defect he kept concealed from everyone. After he relocated to Los Angeles in his early 20s, Richard realized that fitness facilities only targeted those who were already in shape. I think you guys can relate to this. If you aren't the most fit or you're not comfortable in the gym, it's kind of hard to get comfortable in the gym because everyone there is already so fit. So it's intimidating. I mean, even I consider myself fit, obviously, but like I still get uncomfortable and intimidated, especially if I'm not in my normal gym, in my normal environment, because working out, it can be really vulnerable. Understanding the adversity of obesity, he opened up his own gym and began to conduct classes focused on rarity in the area of increasingly popular hookup gym culture. He appealed to and supported attendees of all shapes and sizes. His workout videos soon followed, with viewers falling for Richard Simmons' exuberant and eccentric personality. And Richard Simmons was so 80s. I mean, he was in hot pants, bedazzled tank tops, and he had a really light-hearted approach when it came to obesity, which, keep in mind, up until this point, everyone was shamed for being fat. So then he finally said, hey, don't feel that shame anymore. Come in here and feel good about yourself and work it off. His 1988 Sweatin' to the Oldies video became the biggest selling fitness home video of all time, grossing north of $200 million. While viewers loved the campy persona that Richard Simmons presented to the public, he became a punchline for comedians across the country, and it took a private toll on him.
When Richard Simmons walked out on Howard Stern.
I came here to talk about Congress.
We're going to talk about Congress. I'm talking about you putting your penis inside of a woman.
Oh, Robin.
You always wear a costume. Like, why will you never wear...
This is not a costume.
No, I mean your workout.
That is so offensive.
No.
Don't even...
Gary!
One phone who wants to date you.
Stop it.
No. Richard, wrong. Richard.
Richard.
Come here. Hey, don't leave like this. Richard, you're making a mistake. Don't leave like this.
I knew Howard would get out of line.
Did I say something wrong?
Yes. No, he might have, you know, some what?
Female tendencies.
Well, don't we all? You hurt him. Yeah.
No, I did. I loved
Richard.
it. I'm going to go out and say something.
You said that.
I'm going to bring him back in here. Wait.
Then he said you appealed to both sexes.
Oh, there he is. He's out the door.
Howard Stern is such a terrible guy, and poor old sensitive Richard Simmons. He's over here getting bullied by Howard, and clearly he couldn't take it, running away in tears. Richard Simmons was a frequent guest on The Late Show with David Letterman, and they seemed to have a good time until an appearance in the year 2000, David Letterman hoisted Richard Simmons down on air with a fire extinguisher, leaving the fitness guru visibly upset, and he refused to return to the show for 6 years. Suzanne Summers opened up about a sad encounter she had with Richard Simmons behind the scenes at a talk show. She said, "One night I was at Larry King's show and he was either going to be a guest or supposed to be a guest, that being Richard Simmons. And I heard through the Larry King people that he didn't want to be on the show with me." Suzanne Summers said, "Why?" And he said, "She'll make fun of me. And that's not my style. I never make fun of anybody." But that's when I realized a little insecurity has gotten in there. Suzanne said, "I liked him. I was always so surprised when he thought I'd make fun of him, but doesn't that show you he's got a heartache? Something's broken inside because he did it. He had it and he then let it go." The insecure Richard Simmons also struggled with other aspects of his appearance, admitting that he had 3 horribly painful hair transplants after his anorexic battle resulted in hair loss, which a lot of eating disorders will result to your teeth decaying, your hair falling out, and Richard Simmons is one of those people who experienced those symptoms. Richard said, "I've had hair transplants, but you can only do so much. So I have 12 hairs left and I just spray them, toss them, and then make them look like a salad. I'm glad I have hair on my head, you know?" Meanwhile, the highly empathetic exercise entrepreneur allegedly struggled to separate himself from the struggles of his dieting devotees. In response to Richard Simmons, Dr. Phil said, "There's a tremendous burden you take on when you connect with so many people that are sharing their challenges with you. It could really drag you down." One former attendee at Richard Simmons' gym said the star would cry until snot came out of his nose because he was so emotionally invested in the well-being of his fans. And you could tell why people love Richard Simmons because of the way he interacted with his fans. I mean, he got personal with them. People felt comfortable with him. He was on TV in their homes. They were working out with him. It was a different celebrity relationship.
There's a tremendous burden you take on when you connect with so many people that are sharing with you their challenges, their burdens, and it can really drag you down.
I was always so surprised when he thought I'd make fun of him. But doesn't that show you he's got like a heartache? Something's broken inside?
I happen to be a very serious person, and pretty much a recluse.
So as I've told you guys, Richard Simmons hasn't been seen since 2014. The superstar suddenly stopped performing in public, citing problems with his knee. According to the documentary, Simmons underwent a right knee replacement that left him in a considerable amount of pain. Doctors told him that he would need a left knee replacement, but he refused to have the surgery after being too traumatized by the first operation. Quote, "We know still to this day that Richard still hasn't gotten the corrective surgery on his left knee. He walks with a cane, and that explains a lot. He's just not the same guy anymore," which when your entire reputation has been built on being the fitness guy and he already was so traumatized by this one knee surgery, they should have just done both of them at the same time. Maybe it's like a healing thing, like you just get one done so you can heal that one and do the other. But of course, Richard did not react well to that. TMZ Harvey Levin also adds that Richard Simmons' decision to retreat from public has been about preserving his brand. Quote, "He wanted to be remembered as the vibrant and healthy Richard Simmons, not an elderly man with a medical problem." And that makes sense to me. He doesn't want to be seen as weak with a cane. He wants to be that happy guy that we have record of. So he's just going to remove himself since he's not that person anymore, which is sad because, you know, as a human, we all have growth. We go through phases. He doesn't have to be the same Richard Simmons. We can still love him for who he was and who he is now.
Well, after a 2-year public absence, the fitness guru broke his silence and addressed all kinds of rumors with ET. Weight gain, witchcraft, even kidnapping.
No, I'm not kidnapped. I'm under no spell. Sometimes we get lost in our sadness.
Now, our last sit down with Richard was in August of 2013, and this moment caught our attention.
When the king gets depressed, he doesn't call for his wife or the cook. He calls for the little man with the pointed hat. And he says to the court jester, "Make me laugh." and I am that court jester.
A documentary exploring what happened to Richard Simmons revealed that he has been withdrawn and he's a loner. Even at the height of his fame, the publicly bold and brash Richard Simmons preferred to spend nights at home alone. The LAPD performed a welfare check on Richard Simmons at his Hollywood Hills home in 2016 after concerns that his longtime housekeeper Teresa was holding him against his will. The cops found that the superstar was articulate, relaxed, and lucid and appeared to be living happy at home with his housekeeper as company. The only impairment that police noted at the time of their visit was a slight limp to his knee, which adds up. Richard said, "Nobody is holding me hostage. I do what I want. I've always done that. People should always believe what I have to say because I'm Richard Simmons." So really, he just wants to escape and live a private life, and I guess he doesn't even leave his home, which is kind of scary to me. Like, can you imagine being in your home every single day and not leaving? I mean, I just get so I get like angsty if I'm home too long, so that would really stress me out.
Is he holding you hostage?
Oh no, Teresa has been with me for 30 years. So we're like an old married couple.
Well, when was the last time you actually left your house?
Well, I go out on rides and I go on walks, but you know, I haven't done any television lately. I still weigh 150. I work out every day. I have a gym here at the house, and I'm very healthy. There was time for me to take some time to be by myself. You know, for the last 40 years, I've been traveling, teaching classes, and I had a knee injury, so I had a knee replacement, which was very difficult for me. And now my other knee is hurting and I don't want to have another replacement. So I've just really been taking it easy. No one should be worried about me.
Shortly after we heard this phone interview from Richard Simmons, more rumors came about. And there were rumors that Richard was actually transitioning into a woman, that he was transgender, kind of like what Caitlyn Jenner had experienced. And this was something that Richard Simmons did not like and actually sued for defamation. But this lawsuit was dismissed and Richard was left with the bills to pay, the attorney fees of these publishing companies, because they alleged that he may have been transgender. They never actually fully claimed it. I don't know what basis they had, but either way, Richard did not win that battle. It was kind of just thrown away. Nonetheless, he had to pay $130,000 in attorney fees to media outlets and their publisher. Richard sued the media outlets in May 2017 after they ran articles claiming that he is transgender. A June 2016 cover of the National Enquirer, for example, read, "Richard Simmons, he's now a woman." In his lawsuit, Richard claimed the outlets published these stories with calculated malice. Quote, "This case is about particularly egregious and hurtful campaign of defamations and privacy invasions, falsely asserted that Mr. Simmons is transitioning from male to female, including shocking sex surgery, breast implants, hormone treatments, and consultations on medical castrations," which is something that Richard said is not happening. So why in the hell are you able to publish this about someone when there's no fact at all in the story? While the National Enquirer stated on its website that its reporting on Richard Simmons was based on credible sources, Richard says in his lawsuit that his former assistant, whom he said has blackmailed, extorted, and stalked him, was responsible for the false claims. And I don't know what type of information this assistant had, but screw them if they really think they could go and pull one on him and, I don't know, try to expose him for being trans. I mean, I feel like we should be over that as a society. If he's trans, then sure, like, let him be her and move on. Is it going to change what you do in your day to day? It's not going to change for what I do, you know? I don't care if people are trans or not.
Richard Simmons speaks out on rumors he's transitioning. The fitness guru took to Facebook Tuesday to address what he says are false reports. Quote, "I feel compelled to set the record straight and refute these lies. Although I am not transitioning, I have and always will be supportive of those who are going through their journey." In the post, Simmons also paid tribute to the victims of the mass shooting in Orlando, which claimed the lives of 49 people. He added, "We should not lose focus on showing love, strength, and compassion to all of the LGBT community during these tragic times. My broken heart and healing thoughts are with the people of Orlando and all other victims of prejudice, bigotry, and hate."
Now, the reason why this lawsuit was dismissed is because the court ruled that calling someone transgendered is not hateful, because saying that someone is trans does not mean that you are spreading hate on their name or defaming their character. So that's essentially why it was thrown away. So yes, maybe it wasn't true, but it was not hateful. Now, thankfully, these stories have been recanted, but the damage was done. And I think moments like these are why Richard Simmons probably won't ever come back.
Is Richard Simmons now a woman? That's the shocking headline in the National Enquirer. Simmons' spokesman is calling the story not true and a complete fabrication. He added, "This is crap." But the Enquirer insists that Simmons is in fact transitioning into a woman. According to the Enquirer, his new name is Fiona, and he's already had a secret boob job. The front page photo purportedly shows Simmons with long black hair and full makeup, and decked out in feathery lingerie. The magazine insists it's not Photoshop. Yes, this photo shoot is real, it reads. The Enquirer claims the reason Richard Simmons hasn't been seen in nearly 3 years is because he's going through the sex change and has been hiding out here at his mansion in the Hollywood Hills. The shocking report comes just days after the fitness guru was rushed to the hospital for, quote, bizarre behavior. Simmons claims he was simply dehydrated. When he returned home Monday night, photographers were waiting outside his gate.
Richard, how are you doing? Richard, everybody's worried about you. Can you tell us how you're doing?
Look closely at the man in the backseat of the car. Is that Simmons? If so, he's got a full beard and mustache.
This is so messy. Clearly, Richard Simmons is not mentally doing well. They don't even know who's in the back of the car. Is it, him with a full face of hair, or is he dressing up like a girl and doing little photo shoots? There's so much to unpack here. But because Richard Simmons became such a hot topic, people wanted to figure out what was happening with him, and it got really scary. Borderline stalker behavior. Richard Simmons files a lawsuit against private investigator Scott Brian Matthews for planting a tracking device on the vehicle of his caretaker. So one of Richard's caretakers was being followed by this investigator. A second lawsuit alleges that this investigator, Scott, was hired by In Touch Weekly to track Richard's movements. Scott was actually criminally charged for this behavior. So if I was Richard, I wouldn't want to leave my house either. And it turns out the First Amendment does not protect putting a tracking device on Richard Simmons' car. According to Variety, a 3-judge panel determined that Richard Simmons can move forward with a lawsuit accusing In Touch Weekly of invasion of privacy after their investigator Scott was hired by the magazine and put a tracking device on his vehicle. In Touch Weekly claims they hired investigator Scott to go and take some pictures of Richard Simmons at the hospital, not to go and track him. But I guess investigator Scott thought he would have to do anything to get the job done, so there's some miscommunication and some really bad decisions here. What's really sad about Richard's situation is how nasty people have been his entire career. He was bullied back then for being kind of flamboyant, feminine, his outfits, and now he's still being bullied, over his possible gender identity. And I just think it's really gross to look back on these clips and to see how people spoke about this. And I just really hope that we are ahead of this as a society. I really don't want to ever look back and see these really nasty takes again.
Richard Simmons is taking off those short shorts and putting on his legal briefs. What's that mean? Apparently, Richard Simmons is suing this private detective. This guy's name is Scott Brian Matthews. Apparently, this private detective planted a tracking device on Richard Simmons' car for a year. By the way, if Richard Simmons supposedly hasn't left his house, that's what, and there are people who are watching the house.
It's the easiest private investigator job ever.
Now, in 2022, we hear from Richard Simmons again. He breaks silence and tells the Post he's living the life he has chosen. Quote, Richard is eternally grateful for the continuous outpour of love and gratitude he's received from across the globe. He is happy, healthy, and living the life he wants. Thank you to everyone for your kindness and love. Now, that was the last time we heard from Richard Simmons until recently on Twitter. And this was a Twitter thread I had to read to you guys because I don't know what to think. February 26, Richard Simmons writes, I have a little lump in my throat as I write this. She is one of the most powerful and adored women. She is the queen of TV, an actress, producer, a book writer, and a lecturer. When she talks, everyone listens. She has billions of followers. All you have to do is think of her first name. I am speaking about Oprah. In the 80s, she flew me out to Baltimore, Maryland to do her talk show. She greeted me with a smile and a hug. She dressed so beautifully, she was a fashionista. I still remember a long, colorful silk scarf that draped around her upper body and tied on her shoulder. When I told her my story, she was interested and showed her happiness for me. Later, she moved to Chicago and she had me on again. Again, only kindness emanated from her. I watched her show every day. She could interview anybody and the audience adored her. When she walked on stage, the audience went crazy. One day, she walked out pulling a red wagon, and in the red wagon was some kind of lard or fat representing the amount of weight she lost. Oprah wore a turtleneck and a pair of jeans. She radiated light. I was coming out of a studio where I'd met the national gossip columnist named Cindy Adams. She was petite with perfect makeup and coiffed hair. She asked me, "What do you think of Oprah's weight loss?" I replied, "As long as Oprah exercises and eats healthy, she'll be fine." The next day, she wrote a column in a headline that was, "Richard Simmons thinks Oprah will gain all of her weight back and some." I never said that. She made it all up to sell newspapers. I forgave Cindy because that's the kind of person I am. When Oprah read this, I was erased from her life and I never asked to be on her show again. She never ever forgave me for something I did not say. I still respect Oprah. Her heart is filled with helping people just like me. I still remember those 2 times I did her show. I never talked to a gossip columnist ever again. The world is a better place because of Oprah. Love, Richard. Which I think is such like, why am I getting sad? I'm like, damn, we really have done Richard wrong as society. We weren't ready for someone like him. Someone as colorful and, you know, kind of fruity. I mean, as a gay person, I can say he's fruity, but in the best way possible. It's like we needed more people like him so that people who are expressive, who are flamboyant, have a place on television to be who they are. And I'm sorry to Richard Simmons that we, the world, we were not ready for him. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this isn't the end of Richard Simmons, but it was interesting to see him on Twitter and to get this off his chest. And I think that there is plenty of space for him to come back in whatever capacity he's in, whatever health mindset he's in. I mean, we are a different society now as far as body positivity, and if he wants to come out limping with a cane or in a wheelchair or whatever, we will be here to praise him. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in a new one soon. Bye guys.